The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our webcast, Bad Data, Expensive if Not Controlled, and When Bad Data Happens to Good Companies. I'd like to start off by introducing several of our key speakers today. First, we have Marcy Barton-Goodwin. Marcy is founder and CEO of Access Software Designs since 1989 and provides education consulting services to Fortune 1000 companies as well as to government entities. Marcy is the co-creator of EM-SOS and is an expert in the field of enterprise model management. Marcy's company Access is a valued partner to Sandhill, and together we offer EM-SOS, our metadata management framework, to our clients. Hello, Marcy.
Hi there, Robert. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Marcy. Our second speaker that'll be joining us is Ham Hayes. Ham is a long-time business process and enterprise architecture specialist who has spearheaded the direction of standard-based model-driven enterprise architecture at Sandhill. And of course, Ham, you'd like to say hello?
Yes, most certainly. Thank you very much, Robert, and welcome everybody. Enjoy our presentation.
Excellent. And of course, you're listening to Robert Lutton, Vice President of Sandhill Consultants. This presentation is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel later on this week. Go to our next screen. In this presentation, Marcy, Ham, and I, we've done a lot of research on actually how bad data can be if not controlled in an organization. We'll actually be discussing how data can actually be considered a liability rather than an important asset to an organization. In speaking with clients, we understand that data architecture is often considered the stepchild, and it's been very difficult for data practitioners to get the visibility needed to make data architecture a critical and, more importantly, funded endeavor. It is our hope that the research provided here will be a useful artifact in changing that outcome. During the webcast, we're going to focus on a critical and often ignored part of the data/metadata puzzle. And we're going to look at a solution from Sandhill and Access Software, EM-SOS, that if leveraged correctly, could potentially add millions of dollars to the company's bottom line. However, we've got to start with some bad news about bad data. Ovum Research has reported that the business impact of an organization's bad data is costing businesses up to 25% of the revenues. If that's not bad enough, it's getting worse. Most organizations are starting to realize that managing the quality of data within an enterprise has become increasingly important due to a number of key business drivers. Most executives, we hope, are aware that data drives a company. However, here are a few areas where bad data can cause issues. Competitors with better quality information and analytics can actually cost the business revenue. Customers and clients are demanding better informed products and services, and if they don't get, they may go elsewhere. Legal and compliance requirements continue to grow, and if not addressed correctly, it will cost the organization revenue.
Robert, excuse me,
yep.
This is Marcy. I'm not seeing the slide. I don't know if anybody else is having that problem.
Oh. No, I'm on the bad business slide, so can you see that slide, Marcy?
I cannot. I am just seeing the initial...
Likewise.
Ham, can you see it?
No, I cannot. It says waiting for view Robert Lutton's screen.
Oh, well, you know what that might actually be? Oh, here we go. Might be worthwhile if I actually show my screen, so let me do this.
That would be good.
Let me see if that works better.
There we go.
Beautiful.
Okay. You seeing that?
There we go.
Apologies and thank you to all the people who also said that they can't see the video. So with that, obviously we've gone through the introduction. We've gone through the second slide. So tell me, Marcy, you can see that second slide now?
I can, Robert, but yes, if you can move the control off of the screen or to the side, that would be most excellent.
I have done that. That should work.
There we
now.
go. I think we're good now. Ham, looks good to you too?
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. Excellent.
We're good to go, Robert. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Marcy. Thanks, Ham. So as I say, we've done a lot of research, and we certainly hope that this information will be of a benefit to our actual clients. So we talked about the bad news, how in organizations, the impact of bad data in organizations is costing up to 25% of the company's revenue. This is information is verifiable out in the organization, and probably some of our organizations that are on this phone will also be able to combine and recognize that, yes, a substantial amount of the company's revenue is actually going because of bad data. Organizations need a strategic business objective to help increase the ROI of data assets, and we certainly hope to be able to provide that on this webcast. However, when it comes to bad data, most organizations overestimate the quality of their data and underestimate the impact that errors and inconsistencies have on their bottom line. And don't just think it's large companies either. Every business is affected by bad data. For example, it's been reported that the U.S. healthcare is losing $314 billion due to bad data. In addition, it's also been reported that the U.S. economy is losing $3 trillion a year. Yeah, that's $3 trillion due to the cost of bad data, and according to Harvard Business Review. Gartner also weighs in by saying that Fortune 1000 enterprises will lose more money in operational efficiency due to bad data and data quality issues than they will spend on data warehousing and CRM initiatives. I actually thought I'd take a quick look at actually what $1 trillion looks like compared to a jumbo jet and a White House and things like that. So you got this little visual of $1 trillion. You can imagine what $3 trillion looks like. Of course, with corporate data growing about 40% and big data becoming a large part of the picture, we're not seeing the problem getting better, only worse. And with these huge sums of money walking out the door, we here at Sandhill wanted to take a look at the cause and offer a solution to an often ignored part of the puzzle. We wanted to start first of all by defining the types of bad data. Of course, there are many examples of what we mean, and most of these may be familiar to our current audience, but it's important for us to highlight them for future reference. Bad data can be duplicate data, such as 2 or more records, identical records. Bad data can be conflicting data, such as the same record with different attributes or definitions. Bad data can be incomplete data, such as missing attributes. And bad data can be invalid data, such as non-standardized attributes. Bad data can be unsynchronized data, such as data not being shared between 2 systems. All are equally damaging to the organization. The bottom line is that bad data costs businesses time, money, and customers. Not only is it a huge hassle to recover and fix issues, but it reflects poorly on your business and bad customer service due to bad data. So moving on to some of the key issues resolving bad data. When we looked at the issue of bad data, we realized that there were 3 things that stood out for an organization to generate value from its data. First, we recognized that businesses wanted to and needed to leverage data as an asset in order to be able to improve data quality, improve data usability, and improve data governance. The second thing we took a look at was the trust. Organizations needed to trust the data as an asset in order to improve business decisions, which are dependent upon good data, improve its competitiveness, and improve the bottom line revenue and profitability. The third item that we wanted to look at was the control, that organizations wanted better control of its data in order to improve data integration, maintain data regulations, and of course, pass audits. If there are 3 things that you remember from this webcast, it's that an organization must must improve the leverage, trust, and control of their data. Well, the organization will continue to have bad data. It's also worth mentioning that organizations that are moving in this direction, there have been published reports that best practices organizations could actually increase their revenue by more than 20%, more than 70% based upon the increase of data quality. Those are huge benefits that we want to try and make sure that our clients on this phone can have the chance to achieve. But first we wanted to delve into the three areas of leverage, trust, and control. So let's take a look at the impact of not being able to leverage your business data. In order to make sure we all understand how the impact of not leveraging your data, we wanted to define what leverage meant in our vernacular. We see leverage as the ability to use data for a positive outcome. In the following slides, we'll be reviewing some of the negative outcomes of bad data and the cost to the organization. For example, how bad data causes inaccurate sales forecasts, or how bad data results in misjudged cash flow or working capital, or the effects of bad data resulting in incorrect customer research, or how bad data impacts business operations and increased risk and reputational damage. Businesses that can't leverage their data end up with serious issues and cost increases. And again, this is important to highlight. For our audience out there, we wanted to really show the areas that are affected by bad data, and not only being just a data side of the house, that it does affect all sides of the operations, whether it be sales, delivery, operations, manufacturing, things like that. And you'll see that as we go through this. So for example, when it comes to sales forecast, accurate sales forecast is important for every organization, yet there are still incorrect forecasts out there due to bad data. And there are various ways bad data can affect a sales forecast. For example, quantitative forecasts that are based upon historical data could be skewed if the data is insufficient or bad. Or data problems may arise if the forecast is based upon faulty assumptions. In this situation, good data is misused to produce a bad forecast. And of course, when the sales forecast is wrong, it causes a host of problems, from late customer deliveries to increased inventories and higher costs, something that we all want to avoid. When it comes to good decisions, you can't make good decisions with bad data. It's obvious that organizations that can't understand the true performance of business without reliable data. Cash flow is one of the greatest challenges of many businesses out there. And when there's an issue with bad data, it causes havoc for the business. For example, businesses can cause delayed or missed payments due to bad data. Bad data can cause ignored and often overdue customer payments. Bad data can cause premature or delayed supplier payments. And bad data can result in increased interest charges. The bottom line is that if you can't make good financial decisions, the bottom line is you can't make good financial decisions with bad data. We also were able to report on several incorrect customer research due to bad data. There's a couple of examples that we wanted to highlight. Of course, it's very difficult to get companies to kind of realize that they've made a mistake, but these were publicly publicized situations that we thought would be kind of interesting to show the issue of bad data. Target set off a whirl of outrage and privacy concerns a couple of years ago when it angered an unsuspecting father by sending discount coupons for cribs and baby clothes to his teenage daughter. The problem was she hadn't revealed her pregnancy yet to her parents. Another situation where an expected turnout for Scotland's independent referendum recently was pretty high. CNN took it to a whole new level. Many of CNN's computer-generated interactive graphics of the live event coverage were powered by data analytics. And in this case, it looks like the data was overly optimistic. During a report on referendum, CNN displayed a graphic that showed 110% of Scotland's population had been polled. According to the graphic, 58% of Scots had said yes and 52% had voted no. The graphic was obviously wrong and it was off the total voter percentage. But there's also the fact that it was wrong for the majority of Scots actually voted no. The erroneous graphic quickly went viral on social media and Twitter channels and users mocking the network for the miscalculation. And while CNN updated the graphic later to be more accurate, one showing 52% voting no and 48% voting yes, the damage was already done. The third and final one we wanted to show on this screen was that Pinterest, a huge favorite of brides looking for wedding planning ideas and inspiration. However, Pinterest may have taken it to a new awkward level. The website accidentally emailed some users congratulating on their upcoming wedding and offered a special on wedding invitations. Except many of the women weren't married and some of them were actually single. Many of the unhappy recipients took to Twitter and shared the erroneous email. So we had to look at how we can actually leverage. It's important we need to be able to leverage the data, but it's also important that we need to be able to trust the data, and that's the second area that we wanted to look on. Again, let's make sure we understand the definition of trust as we see it. We see trust as data that has a consistent meaning across the enterprise. In a survey commissioned by KPMG and conducted by Forrester Research, it showed that executives and C-level business leaders in companies around the world generally aren't confident in their data management and analytics systems, and that they couldn't produce reliable, decision-worthy insights. Businesses that can't trust their data increase risk and cost at all levels of the business, both from internal and external, and this leads a huge mistrust in the data from the executive suite. Here are some of the reasons why executives don't trust their data. One is garbage in, garbage out. Another one is that the data is always late, or there's no clarity on where the numbers came from, or the data is inconsistent. Nobody owns the data. And of course, we saved my favorite one for last. It's just plain wrong. So we shouldn't be surprised, therefore, that in a recent experience study, with all the ongoing issues around bad data, there's any wonder that management has a very low trust for the organization's data. Surveys continue to show that executives continue to base their decisions not on data, but on experience, gut feel, and advice and peers, advice and information from their peers and direct reports. The third area that we want to take a look at before we get into the solutions that we can offer is the area of control. Again, let's make sure we understand the definition of control. We see control as governance, management, enforcement, and accountability of the data. We're going to take a look at three areas that impact of not having good control of your business data. Obviously, there's wasted time in the workplace due to bad data. There's accidents, damage and death in some instances due to bad data, and the cost of non-compliance due to several issues in and around bad data. Businesses that fail to implement control of the growing complexity of data will continue to risk reputational and financial damage. We'd mentioned earlier that $3 trillion are wasted annually due to bad data. Money is wasted because senior executives hedge their plans because they don't trust the data. We're told by our clients, and we see this both in our clients and obviously out there in the media, that data scientists spend an inordinate amount of time cleaning the data. In some estimates, up to 50% or more, especially when it comes to big data. And they have to hunt around for the source of the data. Dare we mention the word metadata. Service delivery people waste time correcting flawed customer information received from sales. Perhaps the actual item they ordered doesn't even get to the end destination. Salespeople waste time dealing with incorrect data prospect. Wrong phone number, even the wrong name could be an issue. The list goes on, and we're sure that folks in this call and listening to this webcast can identify and create their own list of how money is wasted due to bad data. Accidents happen, but it's worse when they happen because of bad data. Take the issue that happened in 2010 in San Bruno, California. There was a huge explosion that resulted in the death of 8 people, fire leveled 35 houses, and damage to many, many more. When the final investigation was completed, the board found that data used to support the company's information management program was inaccurate. The error came from incorrect pressure codes from accounting and not from engineering. This happened because the data was cloned and pulled from an out-of-date, difficult data source. It was a simple error, but it had a devastating outcome. Not surprising, a catalog of companies that end up in the regular sites is long and getting longer. In March, the U.S. Commerce Bank, Global Oilfield Service Company, Schlumberger, and PayPal all agreed to pay hefty fines for allegedly violating the mix of anti-money laundering laws and sanctions. More famously, BNP Paribas settled a U.S. sanction-related charge for $8.9 billion in 2014, and the same year Credit Suisse was fined $2.6 billion. However, let's not forget that the new European regulation, GDPR regulation, that is coming into effect and how that will affect organizations that handle data over North America for their citizens in Europe or organizations to deal with in Europe. There's also a flip side to this that we wanted to mention. While the cost of compliance is high, the flip side is that for organizations that can get a hold and can resolve their compliance issues, there's an opportunity for the firm to improve its credibility, especially in the eyes of the public, and allowing it to safely enter markets that otherwise they may have avoided altogether. It seems, from our point of view, that there's no end to the issues that bad data creates. Yet the question we continually ask ourselves is, with all the data quality solutions out there, why has this issue not gotten better? The number one reason is that all bad data is a result of little or no standardization of the metadata and the processes around it. While this isn't exactly a statistic, it's one of the main roots of causes of most bad data. It's pretty harrowing to consider how much money in your organization, in your country, and worldwide is being wasted due to small things like duplicate data attributes and/or missing or incomplete data attributes. The good news is that Sandhill has an offering that allows organizations to gain control of the data. You see, Sandhill and Access software designs understand that bad data is a result of little or no standardization of the metadata. That's why EM-SOS 2.0 exists. I'd like to bring in Marcy and Ham to talk about Sandhill's offering EM-SOS 2.0 and how, if an organization can leverage it, they can improve upon the leverage, trust, and control of the data by metadata standardization. Marcy.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Robert. And again, thank you for joining us. Ham and I are going to give you just a very brief look at EM-SOS. But first, I'd kind of like to say that I've been in the business for a while, and without telling you my age. And over these many years, I have worked in the model management world. I've kind of found that no matter what the company's size or what the industry is, the challenges of turning data from a liability to an asset are the same. And the way forward to achieving consistent, reliable metadata is in implementing a metadata management infrastructure. It's the only way to get control over this. An infrastructure foundation, which creates trustworthy metadata, not only prevents confusion and mistakes and rework, which is tremendously costly, but it's also critical as the basis for any data governance initiatives that may be considered or that you might already have in place. Our experience has shown us that enterprise metadata management must address 6 critical areas, while also being able to be accessible to all the resources that need it. These would be
Marcy?
EM-SOS is an enterprise metadata management framework that incorporates these 6 critical areas, and it gives visibility and support to the data design management process. I'm going to just mention a tiny bit about each of these bullets, and then we'll show you just a few slides showing you what EM-SOS looks like and how it manages all of this. We all know and understand the inherent problems of a siloed environment, and most companies that we work with have siloed environments to some extent, either through mergers, acquisitions, old systems, whatever it might be. This is something that we're all aware of. But unfortunately, that kind of disparate environment sustains all of the elements of bad data. It prevents interoperability between systems, and it creates a whole other list of downstream problems, most of which we've all experienced personally. So the key, it seems to us, is to give truth to the fact that it's the enterprise point of view that must be supported, not all of the individual silos. In addition to that, a larger perspective must be taken when establishing a strategy for the data model life cycle or life cycles. Typically, a company has more than one life cycle. But the important point here is that each life cycle needs to be standardized to prevent inconsistencies, such as the introduction of unwanted redundancies or the use of unapproved structures, which add to the confusing diversity of definitions, honestly, if definitions have even been supplied, and many other elements of an uncontrolled metadata environment. The way to address this is through the consistency of data model life cycles. Standardized metadata, this is the one that we're all aware of. Every company, or the majority of companies, understand the need for reasonable standards and processes or procedures. You know, typically we'll go into a company and see that, of course, they have naming standards for entities and tables and that sort of thing. But typically, they don't have the resources or the skill sets or the time to develop a metadata management strategy around the amount of standards that truly are necessary, and they don't have the time to develop the materials needed to support it. Everybody's already working a full-time job. Creating a metadata infrastructure is not something that folks have the time to add on to the work that they're already responsible for. Yet, without a comprehensive and enforced metadata standard structure, bad data is going to continue to be propagated across the enterprise. As far as standardized processes go, as with standards, consistent processes for managing and instantiating correct metadata are also critical. And typically, we found that this is the area that has not been given the necessary time or attention that's required. Folks generally know they need standards. They may or may not have enough of them, or they may be incomplete, or whatever. They may be varying. But typically, there are no accompanying procedures. Dan down the hall has been doing this a certain way for 15 years or whatever, yet that hasn't moved up, if you will, from the mom and pop way of doing it to encompassing the whole enterprise and to being able to get a handle over the control of those processes so that we can actually see what's happening and take responsibility for making sure that things are correct. As far as reusable data structures go, these little guys really are the key to saving time and money and effort, while also helping to standardize the modeling environment with approved and therefore trusted metadata. This is true actually for traditional waterfall development as well as for the many agile environments and projects that we work with. So metadata management is truly the access point for producing reliable structures and results. The last little bit here is measures and metrics. This is something that, this is kind of a new concept for everybody. Nobody really thinks about this, but measures and metrics are really necessary to evaluate the progress on what I call the standardization front. You can't manage an environment if you can't measure it. The metrics actually show the level of trust that you have in not only what's been built, but how well your standardized processes and your standards are working, how well they're being integrated across the enterprise. The numbers don't lie, so it's a way in which we can improve ourselves and see exactly where we are in this situation. Ham, I think I'm going to turn it over to you for the next couple of slides.
Well, thank you very much, Marcy. So next slide, please, Robert. So let's start talking about what EM-SOS looks like. We have a series of screenshots here to illustrate some of the major points that Marcy has just covered in a little bit more detail here. So if we think about what a managed modeling environment looks like, and the first concept is that we want that to be across the enterprise. This diagram here essentially shows that what we call our data modeling standards and procedures are an essential element that have a relationship both with the concept of project management of the development of data as well as development of data in the context of the data that supports applications. It also operates in the context of business requirements, how those are defined and integrated with the development of conceptual, logical, and or physical data architectures, and especially metadata definition, so that there's a synchronization between business and technical development. And also the concept of how can we build up qualified objects that are reusable. So this integration concept, this is the framework that around which we build, oh, there we go.
Sorry,
can we go ahead and the next slide, Robert? Thank you. Or the next click. The next click. Yeah.
Yep.
So this framework, what we've done in terms of the management concept is to actually instantiate within EM-SOS workflow, which is a level of automation that basically allows a user, like a data modeler or data architect or whoever is the specific developer of the metadata, to actually have an automated process whereby the information that is being developed, the data objects that are being developed, any supporting information can in fact enter a workflow so that we have an actual active status of that in terms of things like review cycles, approval cycles, and so forth. In addition, there is the document sharing with the collaborators, whether they are reviewers, approvers, co-workers, or whatever, and essentially a discussion board that allows all of this collaboration to occur. So our notion here from the standpoint of the framework, the managed modeling framework or environment, was that we really wanted to gain efficiency in terms of the process of managing metadata design and development. Next slide, please. So we notice that this diagram, we're going to expand it and talk a little bit more about the concept of a life cycle. At this architectural depiction, we see a lot of arrows which obviously do represent flow of information and objects within the process. EM-SOS has a compendium of more detailed process flows and procedures that allow the specific detailed management that Marcy mentioned in terms of standardized processes and procedures. As an example, if you would click again, Robert, we see such things as the model submission flow. This is the workflow that we illustrated in the previous slide that basically looks at the specific details of all of the actions and activities that are necessary to conduct a submission of a data architecture or data model and have it go through in a review and approval cycle. We also see in the shared data object category, we again have processes that reflect how that actual operation occurs. We have change management flows. Obviously, change management is something that needs to be very strictly controlled within an environment to make sure that the data development process does not get out of sync with things like business requirements as well as standards, as well as technology development. So these life cycles are in fact the core to establishing additional workflows as necessary, whatever is decided within an organization that are critical processes that would benefit from the level of automation. These can be instantiated in those workflows. Back to you, Marcy. Let's talk some more about some of the standardization.
Okie dokie. I'm up to the challenge. So I want to point out that the diagrams that we just saw are, how shall I say this? It's a high-level look. Those diagrams are a high-level look of many of the processes or the procedures that are in EM-SOS. However, all of those, of course, are written up, as well as all of the standards. So this is the screen that we're looking at right now. You can see on the left side that EM-SOS has an index on the left and has different sections. So you can see that the standards section is highlighted, and also the logical data model object naming is highlighted, which of course is what we're looking at on the right side of the screen. We have all the logical standards in here, physical standards in here. You may also notice that we have things like how you name libraries if you're using Model Manager, the Irwin tool, tool set. So it's not just naming standards, it's standards for profiles and so forth and so on, and they're all listed on the left in the standards section. And then on the right, we happen to be looking at how you name an attribute or whatever. And of course, these things can be modified. But what's important here is that out of all the years of us dealing with metadata management and so forth, what we do know is what is required to be documented. So EM-SOS, first and foremost, is a place where you have all of this documented. So all the different properties for attributes, entities, whatever, all of the logical objects, all the physical objects, and so forth. These are things that we know that you need to document. So we have those here. We're not going to go through this whole template, but each standard, each procedure follows the same template so that it's easy to use, easy to see. Everybody knows how to get around. These standards, and this is what's critical, these standards are meant, first and foremost, to have the documentation so everybody sees what the standard is. That's our starting point. But then, when we combine it with the data modeling tool, we actually get to instantiate the standards that the organization has set. So for instance, this little window that Robert just brought up is the case and length standards for logical objects. This happens to be in Irwin. So these would reflect what is already documented in EM-SOS. Then, after we put these settings in Irwin or whatever tool you're using, we then will instantiate them in templates. And the templates automate whatever it is that the standard is. So you can see an example here of a logical data model. And these standards, the length, the case, whatever, would be taken from the template, which is based on the standards that are documented in SOS. Now, The important thing here to note is that by the use of this whole framework working together, we're helping the modeler reduce the amount of time that it takes for them to adhere to standards. It helps the enforcement of the standards and makes it easier for everybody to use them. Okay, Robert, next slide, please. The next one is the standardized processes. And in the same way, this procedures section lists all of the critical modeling activities, as you can see on the left. We deal with everything that we know is necessary to bring an environment into an enterprise point of view and to be able to manage and control what that metadata is going to look like, making it easier for change control and versioning and everything else that needs to be done in this environment. So our example here is model creation and population. How a model is created can be varied. We can take it from another model, whatever, starting with a blank one, starting with a template. This describes the different ways, depending on what you're trying to achieve, on how you consistently create a model for that particular activity. The population piece of this is the use of the global objects. This is where we get reuse. What do we already have that you can reuse to populate your model? So right at the very heart, at the very beginning, we're concerned about not creating redundant data. So we have a way in which we say this already exists. If you need it, use this. Do not create another one. So that's the population piece of this. We saw one of the diagrams that Ham showed you happened to be a diagram that showed model creation and population. And here it is again. And I just want to point out that the diagram relates exactly to what's written in the procedure. There's no difference here. It's just a different way of seeing it. We have different audiences. We want to explain things to different people. But the details of how this diagram actually works when the rubber hits the road is described in the process of model creation and population. So any number of these, any one of these procedures can, as Ham mentioned, be brought into the workflow so that we can have visibility, see where that model is, see what we're doing with that, have reviews about it, see when it's approved, and so forth. So we really start to make sense, I like to say, out of the nonsense of the tremendous amount of work and development that folks have to do today in our huge data environments. Okay, Robert, I think the next slide. Great. Again, here's a diagram that shows how we classify and promote data objects, such as entities and so forth. They need to be vetted. They need to be approved before they can be given the status of reusable. And this vetting and approving objects for reuse, it not only standardizes the object properties, but it's also valuable in decreasing the inadvertent development of redundant data structures, which adds tremendously to this bad data landscape. We want to prevent the diverse definitions or names of entities and so forth. We want to standardize these entities as we go and make sure that they're being used consistently across development. And this detailed procedure, of course, is written up in the procedures section of EM-SOS. Oh, there it is. It's called, it was called data object promotion. There you go. And of course, every diagram always relates to the specifics of how that works. Ham, take the next one, would you?
Certainly. So at the beginning of the section on EM-SOS, Marcy mentioned the importance of being able to measure various aspects of your metadata design process. Quite clearly, you want to be able to report on the critical aspects of your design. Within the context of EM-SOS, there are standardized reports, certainly associated with the data modeling or data design technology of your choice, but they're also important to actually begin to quantify various parameters. And if you click on the next item, please, Robert. So what we see is that critical parameters, for instance, in this particular case, is this model or design based upon a standard? And that's a yes or no kind of thing, and we can show how that can be measured within a report. Are the definitions, which are critical elements of the metadata definition, are they present? In this case, there's a large number of entities and tables that may be without definitions, which can be, again, a critical problem in terms of creating bad data. Other parameters of choice that a particular context would require can be identified in terms of these quantitative reports. The important thing here, one of the critical aspects here, is that these reports can be run by the data modeler or data architect as they're in the design process. And so this gives an early warning that there may be issues and problems. There may have been a glossary that was imported with business term definitions that may be actually missing the definitions, have the name and so forth. So early warning on potential problems is a real benefit for the actual modeler. So this is not something you audit at the end of the modeling effort, but as you're in process doing it. All of this, of course, is to gain additional confidence in the process, the data design process, and to build the trust in the metadata. That is the ultimate thing that we want to do, is demonstrate that what we're producing in the way of designs is trustworthy. And I think at this point it's worth passing back to you, Robert, for a wrap-up.
Yeah, funny you mentioned trustworthy as a key point, because that's our next slide. And Marcy, thanks very much indeed. Again, for our attendees, it's important that we mention that almost all of bad data is a result of little or no standardization of the metadata. The good news is that anyone can increase their use of standardization. In fact, recent articles show that by increasing the use of standardization, you can increase the use of data accessibility. And that translates into huge net income for organizations, both large and small, across the globe. For example, an article in Forbes addressed that if an organization can just increase their data accessibility by 10%, it would translate into a $65.7 million net income for a typical Fortune 1000 company. Not to mention the increased use of standardization can lead to increased market share, provide better customer service, and compete in the market space better. You can jumpstart your standardization or governance project by leveraging Sandhill's EM-SOS. You can improve the leverage, trust, and control of your data by standardization of your metadata. EM-SOS 2.0 can immediately lower the number of data errors, especially those that result from duplicate data entry across multiple applications and systems in your company. Here are a couple of client success stories that have benefited from EM-SOS 2.0. Our first is a large manufacturing organization, and again, this goes to the fact that we've got many clients across many different industries. Their challenge was that they needed to find consistent definitions across the enterprise. The key issues that they solved were increase the quality of the data objects. They saw a reduction in the duplication of data definitions, and they were able to speed up the application development work. The key benefit that they realized was substantial cost savings due to increased reuse of shared objects and the increased understanding of data across the enterprise. Another success story is a client in the health benefits sector. Their challenge was that they wanted to highlight the importance of understanding data standardization throughout the organization, both from IT and business. The key issue solved was a huge improvement in the collaboration between business and IT, as they're all talking about the same objects and the same language and have consistent definitions across the enterprise. They're now well positioned for a foundation of complete data governance offering. In fact, some of the metric reports we produced assisted in identifying what objects are being reused and leveraged, and the objects that they had in a DMLC were critical for their data governance audit. The increased responsiveness to their client needs and market changes was a benefit. The client has achieved consistency across the enterprise in the design process and various business operations. Here are a few other of our client success stories, and you've heard me just speak about a couple. But each of our clients have their own success story. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, transportation, banking, government, healthcare, pharmaceutical, manufacturing, the list could go on. Everyone has the same issue, bad data. Every one of our clients has seen a huge improvement and a reduction in the bad data. So where do we start to fix the issue of bad data? As we've said before, bad data is a result of little or no standardization of the metadata. Sandhill Consultants offers a way to discover how much standardization you have in your organization by offering either a CMM, DMM assessment or an enterprise modeling assessment, which centers on the evaluation of reuse and non-redundancy of data structures within your organization. These short-term engagements analyze your current modeling environment and deliver a findings recommendation document providing analysis and specific recommendations for streamlining and improving the modeling infrastructure. If your end destination is to improve your leverage, trust, and control of data, then finding out or clicking on the assessment or seeing the EM-SOS 2.0 demo would be something for the organization to look at. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes. If anyone has any questions, they can enter it in the chat box. I do like to thank everyone for reminding me at the beginning of the conference call that the screen wasn't showing, so thank you for that. We'll just pause a quick minute. I'll just take a quick look at some objectives, some questions, and invite Marcy and Ham back onto the call. So one of the first questions that come up is, does your solution work for a big data environment? Marcy, would you be able to answer that one?
Sure. In a word, yes. Having standards and procedures around metadata, whether it's big data, little data, I always wonder whether the little data gets offended when it's called little data. But in any event, yes, of course, we've kind of entered a new phase here where big data is becoming more and more a part of the landscape. And my concern has long been, because I've been in this world for so long, that when I've seen the difficulty that we've had just with what I call regular systems and everything, the relational systems and so forth that we've had up to date, it makes me shudder to think how exponentially the problem will happen when everybody starts to get into the big data world, which is obviously the direction. So yes, standards and procedures around big data are just as important, if not even more so, than with our traditional waterfall, agile, that type of approach. So that's yes, yes, yes. That's my answer.
It's worthwhile noting that we are actually working with a couple of clients that actually have big data demands. So we're actually working on how we actually structure the standards and procedures and policies for big data environments, and how it actually marries and coexists with traditional structured environments. So
yeah, it's a brave new world, and people are not actually, for the most part, considering the impact of not having standards around big data. They're not fully aware of that yet, and it's a huge topic and extremely important.
Great. So another question that came in was, does your solution require a modeling tool? I'll take that one, address that one. It's quite interesting. EM-SOS is obviously built for a modeling tool, but it can actually be a foundational level product that you can then marry with a tool, or if you have a tool, you can then marry with a foundation of the EM-SOS, enterprise modeling or enterprise metadata set of standards. So it doesn't matter which. We've had clients that have actually had a look at this and said, this will help me drive what I need to do in my organization. It's great as a basis for a data governance foundation level, but also we've had clients that said, I have this modeling tool, I'm looking for best practices, standards and procedures. Do you have anything that will fit this bill? So it's one of those, you know, it'll actually work both ways. So it doesn't necessarily require a modeling tool, but it does work with the major modeling tools in the industry.
Oh, and Robert,
yep.
I would actually just like to add that EM-SOS is compatible with both the Irwin tool suite as well as Power Designer, just in case we have some of those users out there.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for attending the webcast. We will follow up with each participant and to answer any remaining questions or outstanding questions, we will also post our recording on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. Thank you very much.